So far this year, oh, I hope you can still hear me even with the wind. We'll wait for the breeze to pass. Okay. Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Erin, and I'm so glad to have you visiting my channel today. As you can see, I am outside for this video. I typically film my videos inside, but the weather where I live is just lovely this afternoon, so I thought that I would film on our back porch. So in today's video, I am going to be sharing my April TBR, and I'm also going to be sharing the next book in my reading calendar. If you've seen some of my other videos, you will be familiar with my reading calendar series. And without further ado, let's just dive right into the video. As is tradition, I'm going to start with the reading calendar book for this month. My wife made this reading calendar for me, and so for the month of April, I will be reading Islands in the Stream by Ernest Hemingway. I have not read this one by Ernest Hemingway. Last year I read A Farewell to Arms, and I believe that was the first Hemingway novel that I've ever read, and I absolutely loved it. So I'm looking forward to reading this one, and I'm not familiar with the plot of this story, and I'm still waiting on the copy that I've requested from my library to arrive. So I'm just going to refer to a plot synopsis as written by SimonandSchuster.com. A later posthumously published classic following the adventures of a painter in the midst of World War II. First published in 1970, 9 years after Hemingway's death, this is the story of an artist and adventurer, a man much like Hemingway himself. Beginning in the 1930s, Islands in the Stream follows the fortunes of Thomas Hudson from his experiences as a painter on the Gulf Stream island of Bimini, I hope I'm saying that right, through his anti-submarine activities off the coast of Cuba during World War II. Hemingway is at his mature best in this beguiling tale. I am really looking forward to reading this. One of the things that I really enjoyed about A Farewell to Arms is the way that Hemingway is able to write dialogue between characters. It's so different from any other type of literature that I've read, and at first it felt a little choppy to get into, but once I was accustomed to the way that he writes dialogue between characters, it actually felt like I was overhearing a conversation between two people. So I am really looking forward to reading this new book for myself and seeing what great writing Ernest Hemingway has to offer. One thing that I'm doing a little bit differently this month with my TBR is I'm purposely limiting the number of books that I've selected. And that is because so far this year, oh, I hope you can still hear me even with the wind. We'll wait for the breeze to pass. Okay. So far this year, with my monthly reading goals, have set the number of books really, really high, and I have yet to hit that goal any month so far. So changing up my strategy, setting the bar really, really low so that it's achievable, and hopefully I will feel more encouraged and feel like I'm not so much in like a mini reading slump. So with that in mind, one of the other books that I am hoping to read, or I am planning to read in the month of April, is Then the War and Selected Poems by Carl Phillips. I had the opportunity to attend a lecture that was led by Carl Phillips in the month of March, and he read some of his very early poetry. He read some of his newer pieces, and it was so interesting to hear him talk about sort of his writing process and the way that he views poetry versus essays, and how we can really kind of break down like the structures that we're accustomed to thinking about when it comes to essays or poetry. His writing really crosses boundaries as far as like how can it be categorized, and his descriptions are so beautiful. A lot of the poems that he read at the lecture had a lot of natural imagery, which I really enjoyed, and I believe this collection, I will put on the screen what award it specifically won, but I believe it was the Pulitzer Prize. This is, I think, one of his more recent collections. All of the works that are included in here were written between 2007 and 2020. So I actually had a hard time finding any of his earlier published works, at least through my library system, but I was really excited when I found this collection. So I'm really looking forward to reading this and just reading more of Carl Phillips' writing. The next book I'm going to be reading is actually the book that I picked out for my wife Cynthia to read in her reading calendar this month, and that book is The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. I mentioned this book in my spring reading recommendations video as the perfect springtime read, and despite owning a copy and having seen several of the film adaptations, I have not read the unabridged version of this book. I believe when I was a kid I read a children's version of it, which was much shorter and had lots of illustrations. So this is the book that I picked out for my wife Cynthia to read in the month of April, and I thought it would be really fun if we did it as a buddy reading experience. She, I believe, is going to be reading the audio book, and I'm going to be reading the physical book, and I think it'll be really fun to share our reading progress as we get through the book together. And for anyone who's not familiar with The Secret Garden, I have the plot synopsis here as written by Goodreads, and it reads: Mary Lennox, a spoiled, ill-tempered, and unhealthy child, comes to live with her reclusive uncle in Misselthwaite Manor on England's Yorkshire moors after the death of her parents. There she meets a hardy housekeeper and her spirited brother, a dour gardener, a cheerful Robin, and her willful, hysterical, and sickly cousin, Master Colin, whose wails she hears echoing through the house at night. With the help of the Robin, Mary finds the door to a secret garden, neglected and hidden for years, when she decides to restore the garden in secret. The story becomes a charming journey into the places of the heart where faith restores health, flowers refresh the spirit, and the magic of the garden coming to life anew brings health to Colin and happiness to Mary. The reason I wanted to read the Goodreads plot synopsis versus what was written on the back of this book, I just loved how the plot synopsis was written on Goodreads. Not that this one was bad, but it was just a little, I don't know, like, and then this happened and this happened and this happened. It just lacked emotion. Whereas this one, I feel like it embodies the spirit of the story. So yeah, I'm really excited to read this one, especially in April as flowers and trees are starting to bloom. I think it's just going to be such a perfect book to read this month. And the fourth and final book that I am going to be reading in the month of April is actually for my very own book club, which I am hosting over on Patreon, and that book is Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll. This is technically 2 books, but they are both shorter children's books, and they are most typically published in a single volume. So definitely a doable read in a single month. And this happens to be my favorite book of all time, and I am really excited to be starting my very own book club. It's something that I've wanted to do for a very long time, and if you are interested in checking out my Patreon, I will link that in the description box below. My Patreon is going to include the book club, obviously. It will also have behind the scenes content, bonus content, as well as an exclusive audio series that is just for Patreon, and it's written and produced by yours truly. So if you're curious about it, be sure to check out the link in the description box. And for anyone who is not familiar with the plot of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, this story follows the titular character Alice, who one day is sitting under a tree next to her older sister, and she's feeling bored when suddenly she notices a white rabbit, and she follows it down a rabbit hole, which transports her into Wonderland, where her adventures begin. The sequel, Through the Looking Glass, sees Alice returning to Wonderland, but this time through a mirror, and again, more adventures ensue. I have loved this story since I was very, very little. I obviously saw the Disney Disney animated film when I was a kid. I was probably 4 at the time, and because it's a nonsensical story, it really confused me as a kid, and I went through this phase where I was obsessed with naming things Alice, and there was even a time in my childhood where I wanted to change my name to Alice so badly. I do love my name Erin. Now, I've always admired the character of Alice, and I love this story. I love that it's a portal fantasy, and I'm very excited to be rereading this with my patrons over on Patreon. And those are all the books that I am intending to read in the month of April. I think 4 is totally doable, and if I hit that number, I'm gonna feel very accomplished. So here's to setting the bar at an achievable level. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and let me know in the comments what books you are most excited to read this month. And until next time, I hope you have a lovely and cozy book to curl up with. Bye-bye.